Hi there Cadillac owners. Today in your 2016 Cadillac SRX, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's diode wiring kit. These kits are available in a few different combinations depending on the tow bar and the type of wiring that you want to use for your connection at the front. You can get it with either a 4-pole flat trailer connector, or you could get it where it has a 6-pole connector as well. The 6-pole is the most common, and you can also get the cables in varying styles, whether they be a straight cable, which is what we'll be showing off because that can slide through channels in a tow bar. There's also coiled cables, which are ideal for tow bars that don't have any cable management. And there's hybrid cables, which have a straight and coiled section, and those are ideal in tow bars that have channels to slide the cable through, but maybe you need a high-low adapter and some other things, so there's a very long run between the motorhome and the vehicle, and you need a small section of coil there as well. Your diode wiring is going to take your lighting signals from your motorhome and transfer them to the lights here at the back. That's going to include your left turn signal, right turn signal, tail lamps, and brake lamps. And if you see here that our lights on our motorhome are being mimicked right here at the back of the vehicle, we've got our hazard lights turned on right now, and even those are going to function properly. There's 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. You'll need your tow bar, which is the connection that will connect your motorhome to your vehicle. You'll need your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar. You'll need your base plate, which is the connection point you'll attach your tow bar to on your vehicle. You'll also need your diode wiring, which will take the lighting signals from your motorhome and transfer them to the lights at the back of your vehicle, so people behind you will know your intentions when going down the road. And lastly, you'll need your supplemental braking system, which will apply the brakes in your vehicle when you hit them in your motorhome to help you come to a safe stop. It's important to have your lighting signals here at the back so drivers know your intentions when going down the road, and it'll keep you DOT compliant in all states. Diode wiring is my top pick for getting lighting signals here at the back of your vehicle. There are a couple of other options, such as a bulb and socket kit, where you physically drill a hole and add a bulb into your housing. That's really not used so much these days because we have LED assemblies here and there's just not room inside of it for an incandescent bulb to be added. So the diode kit is typically the better option. But if you don't want to do any modifications or splicing to your vehicle, there is also magnetic light kits available where you just simply set the lights on top of your vehicle and they stick right on there. The only thing I don't like about those is you do have to run your wire every time up to the front from your lights and get them out and set them up whenever you want a flat tow. Whereas diode wiring, once you install it, you simply plug your connector in at the front and you're ready to go. So you can save yourself a lot of time, and I just like the look and cleanliness of the diodes way better than the other styles. Here you can see the cable that came included with our kit. The one we installed had the 6-pole connector we mounted here at the front, and we chose the straight cable because our customer is using Roadmaster's Falcon all-terrain tow bar, which has channels here for our safety cables and our wiring. I do highly recommend getting a tow bar like this because it's going to extend the life of the rest of your components here by keeping them up off the road. It's a nicer, cleaner look, and it really helps keep everything together so things don't get lost as you're moving from place to place and out there on the road. We'll begin our installation here at the back of the vehicle by removing both our passenger and driver side taillight assemblies. To begin, you'll remove the pin here at the top, and if we look at the pin, there is a small opening on one side. You can fit a flat-bladed screwdriver in, and you can use that to pop out the center. You can then just pull that pin out of there. If the back stays like that and the center pops out, that's no big deal. They do come apart. You can then just pull that out, and then the center tab here, this just goes right in there like that. To remove this piece now, you'll have to lift up just a little bit to release the top, and then we want to come down here towards the bottom and then just pull straight outward with it to get that released out of there. That is going to reveal a couple of screws that we're going to remove using a Phillips bit. We're just going to zip those out of there. And then our assembly now is just going to come straight rearward. So we're just going to give it a little push towards the rear. Just like that, it pops off of there. We'll then flip her around here to reveal our wires. We'll disconnect each one of these. So just push in on the release tab to disconnect it. And then we can set our assembly aside, and we're going to do the same thing over on the other side to get that one removed. We can now take the wire harness that comes in our kit. You're going to get a bunch of this here. We need to separate out the green wire. That one's not going to get routed up here to the driver's side. So just cut that off and then just peel some back. You just need to peel enough back. That's probably a pretty good amount. And then we're going to take our white, our brown, and our yellow wire, and we're going to feed that up from the bottom into our assembly here. You can use a coat hanger to do this, or we're going to be using some Airline tubing to push down through an open hole. We'll tape our wire to it, through it, and then pull it back up. So we're just taping our wire harness here with the yellow, white, and brown wires to our Airline tube. You can see we poked it down in the corner here and just kind of reach around the outside there to grab it. And then we can feed it up behind our assembly. We're gonna go ahead and remove our pull wire from it. You can go ahead and feed this pull wire down over on the passenger side because we're gonna be needing that later on to get the wire pulled up over there. So now that we've got these 3 wires up here, this is what we're gonna be making our connections to our factory wires. We can now get our factory wires here. This is the harness we're gonna be using. This was the connector that was plugged into the top of our assembly. So we're gonna peel back some of this wiring here, and you can actually push it back sometimes. Looks like it's pretty thick, so we're gonna have to cut it. So just be gentle when you're using your razor knife here, cutting on the wires. Trying to kind of go between them and then pull upward to stay away from them. A lot of times you can get it kind of started there and then you can start pulling it back because these are pretty thin and the tape on here is wrapped pretty tight, so it can be difficult to nick those wires. So if you can get it started where you can pull it back, that'll make your life a little bit easier and safer than using a razor knife the whole way. So now that we've got it pulled back, we need to filter out the purple wire and the gray wire with the yellow stripe. Those are the 2 we're going to be using. That's our tail and our stop turn circuit. So we're going to go ahead and cut these right at about the middle of the wire here. And then we'll strip back each end of our wires. And we'll be crimping on the Spade terminals that are attached to our diodes. Now when you look at your diodes, most of those are going to be blue connectors, but there's one that's yellow. Don't use the yellow one on these wires. I'll show you where that one's used. These are pretty small wires, so you may need to push on certain types of strippers a little harder to get it to strip. Take our blue Spade terminals here. And these just pull off of your diodes. You can pull them off there. You could leave them attached and crimp the wires on, but I really find it a lot easier if you just slide those off your diodes. We can now move on to the wires that we routed up. Each one of these is going to get stripped back as well. Our white wire here is actually our ground wire, but we're going to be utilizing a small section of it here at the back to act as a jumper wire to get our taillight circuit from our driver's side over here ran over to our passenger side because we need both the taillights on each side to light up, and they're going to use the same signal. The brown wire is your taillight signal wire, so we're going to be using a small section of that white along with the brown. That's what our special yellow Spade terminal is for. So we're going to take the blue one and put it on the yellow wire. This one's just a single wire. And then we're going to grab our yellow butt connector, and if we look at it, it does have a larger diameter hole on the inside, and that'll allow it to accommodate 2 wires. So we're going to take our brown and our white, and we're going to be stripping these together. Now the trick here to determine how much of the white wire you're going to need for the other side, remember when we peeled back that green wire before? We're going to be routing that over to the passenger side shortly. And what I do is as I peel that back and run it over to the side, over to the passenger side, once I get an idea of how long it's going to be, I'll fold that green wire back down our wire here, and then I'll cut the white wire where that green wire stops, and that's going to give me an equal length of green and white wire to run across. So now we've got all these connected here, let's get our diodes in place. Our yellow wire is our stop turn for the left, our driver's side. These are always going to plug into the inside where it says in here, so let's plug that in. And then we need to plug in our factory wires here. So the stop turn circuit is going to be this outer pin here, the gray yellow. Here's the connector side. This is going to go right to our bulbs. Your connector where it plugs into your assembly, that's always going to be the outside. So we're going to plug that in there. That way it's going out to our bulbs to illuminate them. And then the other side of our gray yellow wire that we had cut from the vehicle is going to go to the in. We'll then just attach our other diode basically the same way. Out is always towards our connector. In from the vehicle. And then we need our stop turn in here. We're going to try to get this black wire kind of out of the way there. We don't want to get stuff tangled up if we can avoid it. and then plug that in there. And at this point, I recommend taking your wire here, and I like to kind of just run it back along the factory wire, and then I'm going to zip tie it at this point. This will ensure that as we're routing our wires and stuff, when we're tugging on those wires, we're not going to be pulling our diodes and stuff and possibly disconnecting those. So we can go ahead and take these diodes now, and we're just going to stick them together. So we're just peeling off the adhesive backing there, taking the two, and we're putting them together. And then I like to take the zip ties that we've got included here and go down our wire and just add in a couple on each side of the diode. That's going to help ensure that as we're going down the road and stuff, our connectors that we just clipped onto the diode there can't vibrate off. We can now plug things back in and reinstall the assembly on this side. We're all done over here. And just take your little tabs here, and those are going to line up with the corresponding holes. We can then reinstall our bolts. And then lastly, our trim piece. This will just push back into place. Just kind of work your way down the sides, getting it behind the weather stripping, all the way back in, and then it's just the single push pin that we had removed for that side. So here's the wires that we just connected that are coming down here from where we fed them up. We want to make sure you get this poked up here. We don't want it to fall down on our exhaust, so we're going to poke it back up in there, and then we can use a zip tie here to ensure that it stays up in there. We then continue running it across towards our passenger side. And here you can see our green wire where we had separated it and where it's running off to the passenger side. You can also see the white wire here that we connected with the brown wire going towards the passenger side. We zip tied along any factory wiring harness along the way. Make sure we get all the way over. Once we get our wire routed over to this side, we tuck it up above the exhaust once again and then route it up using our pull wire trick to get it up behind the passenger side assembly. So here you can see our wires routed up over here on the passenger side. We again zip tied them to our factory harness to ensure that these wires stay pulled up on this side. Again, we don't want them to drop down and hit that exhaust. On this side, it's a pretty similar story. We have to separate out two wires, not the black wire. So on this side, you have a white and a yellow, and you have a gray with a brown stripe. The white and yellow is our stop turn circuit. So the green wire we routed over here is the stop turn circuit. So blue Spade terminals, that slides into the in with the vehicle side going to the in, and then of course the out going to our connector. The gray wire here with the brown stripe is our taillight wire, and if you remember on the driver's side we used our brown wire as our taillight circuit, and we used the white wire here to jumper over to this side so it connects into there to get taillights over on this side. Now we've got these connected over here, we can go ahead and get this taillight assembly reinstalled, and then we'll route our wires up towards the front. So here's the rest of our wires going to the front. You don't see white here because we had used a small section of that white wire to go to the passenger side. So going towards the front, we've got green, yellow, and brown, and we will get to some white wire that we have left over as we go forward. We're going to go above our rear suspension and all of our factory wiring here. You want to avoid anything hot like your exhaust and any moving components like your suspension, so that's why we want to make sure we stay on top of all that. So we're all the way on top, and it'll come out here on the other side of our suspension. From there we go over our wiring, and then we run down the side of our fuel tank, and there's a nice little protective channel here that we can run our wire in and run that all the way down the fuel tank. But you also notice here next to our fuel tank we've got our white wire here, and this is what we've got left. So you can see here about how much of that white wire we actually used all the way up to this fuel tank here. Now this needs to be grounded. So we're going to take this, I did peel a little bit back here so we got some flexibility to work with. We'll strip back our white wire. And then we can take the blue ring terminal that comes included with our kit. We're going to slide that over the wire and then crimp it down. Now we can attach it to the frame using the included self-tapping screw. So we're just going to run it right over there, and it looks like we should have no problem getting a tool in here to get this wire attached there. So we're just going to take our self-tapping screw, slide it through the ring terminal, And then we'll use an 8mm socket to thread it right into the frame here. Just want to make sure it's nice and solid. So we've got a good ground there. We can go ahead now and continue routing our wiring towards the front of the vehicle. Our wire then came out of the channel. We tucked it behind all of our lines there, and then we route it up on top through our wiring here. We can zip tie it to that factory wiring along the way, stay above our lines, and at this point here, this is where we turn up to go into the engine compartment. We used our pull wire trick once again to feed a wire down to attach it here to get that pulled up. So our wire, it comes up right here next to our coolant bottle. I then run it across the front of the coolant bottle, and then we go down the side of our fuse box here. I did leave some slack there. You might be thinking, hey, you can pull that tight, but we want to leave some slack there depending on the braking system you're installing. Ours needs to tap into diode wiring, so that's why I want slack there so I can easily access that when I put the braking system on. We'll then continue routing towards the front. We go through the opening here. We can zip tie it to the factory wiring going down here, leading towards the center of the vehicle, and then go down to our base plate attachment point for our wiring. You may or may not have this depending on the base plate you purchased. If you have a Roadmaster, typically you get one. That's what we're using here today. If not, you'll have to make your own, but typically you'll put it here towards the center somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and just tie it up there for now, because at this point we need to connect it to our 6-way connector, depending on the kit you got. If you're just using a 4-pole, your end would have a 4-pole on here and you'd basically be done. If you had the 6-pole and you want to connect that up, you'll follow along with us here shortly. We're going to have to get the fascia reinstalled first before putting this in, because we would have to cut out additional components here in order to have that pre-installed. By leaving it off and then installing it after the fascia is on, we can minimize how much we have to trim on our fascia. So once I get the fascia reinstalled here, we'll show you how to get this connected. And we do have the fascia off because we had just installed our base plate, and that's actually the perfect time to do your diode wiring, because getting this wire routed up here at the front is a lot more difficult with the fascia installed. So I highly recommend, if you're doing a full flat toe setup, to do it just like we are here. We've got a video here on how to put the base plate on as well, so you can follow along with this entire flat toe setup here at eTrailer. Now that we've got our fascia back on, we can go ahead and get our electrical connector installed. Again, if you had the 4-pole end, your installation would pretty much just be complete. You could mount it up here at the front. But if you've got the kit that has a 6-pole, we're gonna get that mounted up now. We'll take our ends here, and the first thing we wanna do is just trim off some excess. I always like to leave some excess so you've got an easy way to be able to remove your connector if you wanna add additional accessories and stuff like that in the future. So we're gonna trim it back to about here. This will give us plenty of room to pull that connector out so we could service it or add anything else that we wanted to in the future. Now we're gonna take our wiring here and separate each of the colors. So we're just snipping in between them. Once we snip in between each one of these, you can take the wire and just peel them apart from one another to give yourself a little more room to work. And then we'll switch over to our strippers and we'll get each one of these wires stripped back. I do recommend taking the boot off of your 6-pole first and just slide it on. That'll keep you from bending up the ends of those freshly stripped wires. We can now take our connector and we're going to insert each of the wires into the appropriate location. They are labeled here on the back. We're going to start with the one labeled GD, as that's our ground wire. So GD there, ground, which is our white wire. So we'll unscrew that. And then we'll just work our way around. The next one over here says LT, that is left turn, which is our yellow wire. Next is RT, which is right turn, that's our green wire. Next is S, that's for additional accessories we won't be using right now. TM is our next one, that is our brown wire. And then our center pin is also for additional accessories, but we don't have any else here. So we'll just be hooking these up into their appropriate slot. So just poke the wire in then. And then you want to make sure you're screwing down on the wire, not the sheathing. And then just tighten it back down. Next, we're going to take some dielectric grease and we're going to thoroughly coat the back side of this. That's going to keep out any moisture so we can have a long-lasting corrosion-free connection here in our connector. And we're going to be pretty generous with it. You can get dielectric grease here at eTrailer if you need some. We'll then take our dust boot, We're just gonna slide it right over our connector there. And then I like to take some electrical tape and wrap it around both sides of our dust boot here just to help further seal it in, keeping that dielectric grease in there and any contaminants out. Now we've got that all taped up, we can secure it to the mounting location on our base plate. If your base plate manufacturer didn't provide one, we do have no drill brackets here at each trailer, so that way you can get your electrical connections securely mounted. We're using a base plate from Roadmaster though, and they do provide nice connections here for our electrical, as well as our breakaway switch for any other accessories that we might be wanting to add here. So we're just gonna take the hardware that came with our wiring kit. We're gonna screw the bolt from the front through our connector and the attachment point on the base plate, and then take the nylon locking nut, put it on the back side, and just thread that bolt into it. And then we can snug this down using a 10mm wrench and a Phillips screwdriver. Now that we've got our connector securely mounted, we can go ahead and test everything out. We're going to be plugging ours into a tester, but you can use your Motorhome and verify that all of your signals are transferring to the lights at the back. So with our tester plugged in, you want to verify that you have your left turn signal, right turn signal, tail lamps, and brake lamps. With everything working properly, we can go ahead and place our vehicle in flat tow, hook it up to our motorhome, and hit the road. And that completes our look at Roadmaster's diode wiring on our 2016 Cadillac SRX.